evening, all you awesome people out there. My name is Scott Churchson. That is JT McGuire. That is Ryan O'Regan. And over there is Mr. Robert Leckington. And welcome to Spanglish World Network and Tales from the Film Set on Zingo TV channel 250 and 249. Make sure when you download the Zingo TV app, and do download the Zingo TV app on the app stores of iOS and Android devices, when you download, though, rate and leave a comment because both apps are free. Can't beat the price. Zingo TV, by the way, is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 and forward. So bottom line is, if you have any kind of technology that's relatively up to date, you can get Zingo TV. Isn't that cool? So let's go. I'm going to start off here. Rob, how you doing, sir? Doing good?
I'm doing amazing now that my computer's all fixed and
yes. Good on you, man. So you work in technology.
Oh,
Ryan? Yeah. How you doing?
Oh, you're pointing to me because your hand disappeared, so I wasn't sure where it was going.
Is that better?
There we go. All right. Yeah. No.
I'm giving you a digital kind of.
Are you pointing to me? I don't see anybody else pointing to me. So, and of course,
God damn it! Now I'm doing the Scott thing where it's like I don't know which direction to look in.
So, all right. Anyway, you guys are doing well there. You know, I will plead with my ends to show more importance. So.
We need
anybody tuning in right now is like, what the living hell?
An arrow that just like is in the center of the screen and it just like points to whoever's talking.
Basically, yeah. We'll just highlight a square. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about car chases, explosions, and basically some of the cool stuff that's happened in cinema when it comes to cars, and not necessarily movies that have the words Fast or Furious in the title. A lot of times when people think about these sort of things, that's the first thing they think about. In this case, we actually, I know Rob had a picture car story. I got one from yesterday. I was going to talk a little bit about some of the cooler stuff I've seen and the explosions that I've seen with that, and just the sheer amount of legwork that goes into it. But before we go into anything in that arena, possible fight choreography as well, we're going to be discussing another Johnny Knoxville Jackass movie, because there's, that one's coming out right now. As you can see from Ryan, who basically can see the fact that I'm pointing at him right now. He is very excited by this idea here. So, Ryan, why don't you take off with it, run with it, and talk to us about Jackass.
Well, I mean, it's one of those movies that you kind of thought, well, they would never make another one. How could they? Especially now with the last 2 years, the way it's been. And I've just always been a fan of Jackass. I've always been a fan of people that go ahead and put their bodies on the line for our entertainment, whether it be stunt people, whether it be wrestlers, whether it be porn stars, people that just really like to get into the thick of it and are willing to do whatever.
Just using your body for art in any way possible.
Exactly. And the Jackass guys, they've pretty much exemplified that. When we were talking to Leroy Patterson last week, we found out that he actually knows one of the guys who's been added to the cast for the movie. And as someone who has done stunts himself, I figured it would be a good idea to just dive into some of the aspects of stunt work that we have done or have seen on set, off set, whatever. And I say that not just being a fan of Jackass, and I will be going to see that movie this weekend, absolutely. Come hell or high water, I don't care if there's a storm coming. But having been someone who's kind of like done their own stunts in productions, whether it be an independent something or even just on television, whether it's dancing naked for Impractical Jokers or falling constantly in multiple independent films, some made by myself, some made by other people, but always me falling on my stomach or my side. It's like, I don't know. Some people I know are afraid of it, but I always just kind of get like a little bit of a rush. It's like, okay, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to do this, and I can pull it off. Yes, there may be some consequences. I'm remembering one time I did an internet radio show called Cluster F Radio. I have to censor the F, obviously.
Please and thank you.
And yes, of course. And there was a contest that I was having with one of the other comedians at the time. And we basically had to punch each other in the arms until we moved or we gave up. Now, obviously, I took more punches. And at the time, it didn't bother me. But 2 days later, I'm looking at my entire bicep. Purple, black, and blue from like here to here. Because the guy who was punching me was obviously taller and larger than me. So his was like, it was like mitts. Whereas me, it was like, pop shots on his. And that was both arms. And I didn't think it was going to get that bad. I thought, okay, well, it'll just be some mild bruising. He tenderized me like a steak. I just I put up with it for there's probably pictures on my Facebook if I actually went ahead and pulled them up. And I'm just like, I cannot use my arms.
Mm.
And yet I would still do it again.
Now,
'Cause
I have
I'm an
two
idiot.
questions on that specific thing in this case. You're bruised up and down in this case. Number one, how long did it take for you to have the bruising go away?
I would say for it to actually look normal, about 6 weeks.
Jeez.
6 weeks.
Okay.
Both
Yeah,
arms.
worst I ever
to
had
be
from bruising was
complete,
4.
yes.
But my other
Wow.
question was this: was this the winter time or the summertime?
Hmm.
Because you got to wonder about what kind of shirt you're wearing in that, to cover that thing up.
No. If I'm remembering correctly, it was like winter transitioning into spring. Because I remember having a long shirt at the time.
Okay. You got away
Although
with that.
on the
All right.
show we did go bare chested. So
Mhm.
this way you could see the arms, you could see us flexing and trying to be all strong and everything while
Yeah.
we're trying to move the other person,
But you weren't wearing long sleeve shirts at like 90-degree weather in the middle of June.
No.
Okay.
No, that'd be a whole other suffering because
I
then it would feel
wonder
like
where he's
sunburn.
going.
But
No,
yeah,
I'm not that silly.
Scott, would something like that have happened to you?
yes. We're not going to talk about that one here, but yes, that has actually. But see, that's
So you hint at that, but you're not going to talk about it?
no.
I just bared my soul
it's
the way
not
I bared
actually
my
film.
arms,
It's
and you
not
can't tell
actually
us.
film appropriate, but I was curious how long it took for your injuries to heal in this case. I can give
Well-
you a story about one that took 4 weeks to heal, but that's actually not even film related, but it is sort of funny because I'm an idiot.
What
Would you
about
rather have that one as a consolation?
what about the Dark Knight Rises? I know that you and I
No.
worked on that together, and we
That was a
we were
that
doing
was a
that
sprained
big-
knee. That was a sprained
yeah,
knee.
yeah,
There
yeah.
was-
Well, but
yeah.
the actor that you were working with had said, "Well, I'm a method actor. I
Oh
got
god,
a
yeah, that guy. Yeah, he's like, my character wouldn't care that your knee is, has you sprained your knee, damaged your knee, so I'm going to treat this the same way as I normally would because that's what my character would do. It's like, dude, you're a freaking background actor. What the living hell? Yeah, that I forgot about that.
But he
No,
was in
well,
there.
I was going to say, I did actually have bruising that took about 4 weeks. It wasn't from the film industry, but I had donated blood once, and the needle, if it's ever happened to you, if the needle shifts out of the vein, it puts the blood right into the muscle itself.
Mhm.
And that's something that you're supposed to let them know immediately. But I spent about 3 or 4 minutes just kind of just sitting there and just being like, so should something happen here? And long story short, my entire arm from here all the way down on both sides had nothing but blood in it all the way through, and it was bruised top to bottom. The blood center in Paramus said in the history of everything they've seen, it was the second worst bruising they had ever seen in all the years they were doing it, because I was a complete idiot and I never said a word to anybody. For he's like, so should we do something about this? And they're like, oh my god.
So wait, this was on like a film set that you were
No,
volunteering?
just donating, basically the longest bruising I had ever had. The one that I asked specifically with regards to 3 weeks, no, I'm not going to talk about that one right here. But I will
What
put it in the
about you,
comments.
Robert? Have you ever had to go ahead and do like your own work, or have you ever seen like some crazy
That's why I'm
stunt
not
work
putting
that's
it
had
up
to be done?
Well, no, not really. I mean, I've done some stunt work, but not as much as Scott. But no, I mean, all the films that I've been involved in are just, they didn't really have any sort of like high speed chases or anything like that. So,
Well, no, but what was the kind that you had to do?
well, I mean, we did do the Dark Knight Rises. I know that I was working myself with a screen partner, and we were throwing punches and things like that in that fight. The final scene, where the cops and the thugs clash together. We did a little bit of training, not as much training as some of the other people had done. I know that there was a couple of days there where they were spent more working on, because they were the actors that were out in front. We were kind of the actors that were out in the back,
Mhm.
but we were still, a part of that whole big fight scene where they had us work a little bit, as far as like throwing punches on screen, that kind of thing. But stunt work, I haven't really done very
So-
much.
Just to stick on this real quick. So Rob, so they did kind of have you doing some sort of fight. Did you get any training, like even if it was like 30 seconds? Did they give
Yeah,
you any type of training with this?
yeah, they did. I mean, they kind of like I worked a couple of days before that big scene where we had the clash with the Gotham City cops and everything. They were working with us to try and get us in, and this is what we want. This is what we want on screen and everything. They showed us like how to throw a punch and just sort of, I guess you wouldn't necessarily connect, but it looks like you connect because camera angles and things like that. So
Right.
they did kind of work with us on that. But yeah, and there was another film that I did. It was an independent film that they shot in Brooklyn, and we actually were working with weapons for that particular
Ooh.
scene. They did have like a, what do you want to call it? Like a guy that was in charge of,
A weapons
Armory
master.
master or weapons master? Yeah. And
That's usually the
Hard-
title for them.
Yeah.
Anyone that has to actually handle the weapons and then
Mhm.
tell you how to use it properly, so that this way you don't have like an Alec Baldwin thing happen.
Yeah.
in this case, we were using like bow staffs and there was a guy that had like tonfas and he was like, doing his little thing.
Dude,
and
nice.
size, the
Oh,
fork.
that's awesome.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean,
But thankfully,
my
you never got
particular
hurt or
weapon-
anything, right?
Huh?
You never
you
got
never
hurt
got
from
hurt or
anything,
anything,
right?
right?
No, not on that one. Interesting enough because we were actually using weapons and in the scene, but that's I mean, as far as stunt work, that's really all that I've ever really done. Nothing major.
See, I think I'd be more afraid about the weapons stuff though, because at least when you're doing stuff with like your own body, or you're doing something with like punches and kicks and stuff, that's stuff that you can easily control because it's your body, it's your appendages, and you know how to like pull back or go forward enough. You have that sense of self.
Right.
Using something else, you don't know how that thing's going to work with you.
Exactly.
I think it depends on who has it. Like I wouldn't use weapons in a film unless I was well trained and working with someone well trained. Like you don't want to have a sword fight. Like, yeah, I just got this 2 days ago. Great. But if someone's been using it for years and they've mastered it and they practiced it and they've done it in other films before, it's like I'm assuming that they know what they're doing.
Yes.
It's funny you bring up that point there, and you look at something. I'm going to use Highlander the series specifically, not Highlander the movie because I only had a few fights, but Highlander the series, which personally Adrian Paul, I freaking love that series. That was 6 years of high choreographed sword fighting scenes, and the amount of work that probably went into the fight choreography for all of these all the way through, and it was really you got to wonder in some cases. About the possible injuries, what may have happened. I mean, the amount of, like I said, the actual amount of choreography that was involved to get the routine right. This is not like Star Wars where you hit somebody over the head with a plastic, instrument. This is a friggin' sword you're swinging around here, and in some cases they were, you had, obviously, his samurai sword from the 18th century, but also a lot of characters had full out broadswords, or big monster things here. And you got to worry about that a little bit. Also, supposedly the lionhead sword that he had in that show broke a lot. So, he would come in for make contact, and then just like the blade would just fly off someplace.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I always wondered
That's
about
an
that, 'cause
accident waiting to
back when
happen.
that show was going on, I used to get like the I guess the fan magazine with all the items that you could purchase.
Mhm.
And I always did want that katana, but my mom was always said, "It's from a TV show. It can't be any good." I'm like, well, no, it's not going to be like the one from the TV show. It's a replica. But obviously,
Well,
she never was like, no, you can't have that in the house.
My mother always referred to it as macho crap. So I've never actually bought any of it because anything involving martial, it was the 90s. The 80s and the 90s were big martial arts movies, TV show generation there. And all of that stuff in her eyes was macho crap. So I never really got any of it. And kind of looking back, I'm like, damn, I wish I had the lion sword. Georgia.
No, I was just gonna say one thing I love about New Jersey is all the flea markets that we had back in the day, and
Mhm.
almost every flea market had that store in it.
Yep.
The one that sold the swords and the sais and the bows and the
And
guns,
I have a couple of
all that
those.
stuff.
Yeah.
You go to Ren Fair, you can get them there too. Actually,
But it's like, yeah, it's like once you have some of your own money and you can go to the store out of supervision, you're buying a sword.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a prop buyer's dream whenever you can actually get something that looks authentic, even
Yeah.
though it might be a little too authentic. And then you have to go ahead and use it for a scene.
Somehow I ended up on like some mail order catalog for like all of these sort of things. So for swords, knives, stun guns. I mean, some of the more interesting books out there, like Uncle Fester's Book of Black Medicine, Anarchist Cookbook. I ended up on like a mailing list, and I just every couple of weeks I would get a new catalog sent to me. For everything swords, knives, videotapes on how to use this stuff. And I'm like, I kind of miss the 90s.
But again, that's why
Get
I
that
like
ninja
stuff
thing.
like Jackass coming up, because
Mm.
they
Back
don't
up.
pull any punches. That is as real can be within the confines of human morality.
Now, my
And-
question to you, I'm sorry, go ahead. I have a question for you when you're done.
No, go ahead.
In this case here, I mean, obviously with a Jackass movie coming out in the era of influencers and TikTok being the way it is, what do you, I mean, when the first two movies came out, that sort of thing, social media was not like it is today. How much of an influence do you think this movie is going to have on a TikTok generation? And what kind of an uptick do you see possibly happening in people hurting themselves this way?
I'd say even if people are slightly influenced by this movie, I do want to think that the guys behind the show, especially considering the issues they've had with, like, the passing of Ryan Dunn and the issues with Bam Margera and, Steve-O and his addiction issues, I want to say that they're at least going to be a little bit wiser about what they do, and that anything that they do is probably going to be under the most strictest guidelines. And if anybody goes ahead and actually attempts any of the stuff that they're doing, even though from episode 1 they've had that prompt saying do not attempt this at home or
Yeah.
do not do this by yourself, they are trained professionals.
But does
They're
that
trained
prompt ever really work?
Probably not.
Look,
I mean-
you can't protect people from their own idiocy.
Oh, no,
All
no,
right,
no, no. I agree.
someone is going to try and do it on TikTok, and God forbid something happens to them. It's their own fault. Anybody who goes ahead and attempts something from Jackass that doesn't have the Jackass crew there. I mean, we already saw Johnny Knoxville at Royal Rumble, and he got hit. All right, regardless of what you think about wrestling, he got hit. All right. He knew exactly what he was doing. He had his guys by the side of the ring in case he was necessary, but he was in there with trained professionals. He wasn't doing any backyard wrestling where he went ahead and just dropped himself on a table full of tacks or something.
Like some
to say
people
anything
we know.
about people that we may have talked to.
Like
but,
some people we know.
he's a guy who knows what's up, and he went ahead and did it. And I would think anybody that's ballsy enough to do that, they should know everything possible before they even attempt or even think about attempting it. So
Even he admitted that he doesn't do that. One of the stunts that he has in this upcoming movie where he rides a bull, he said, I had no idea what I was getting into, and I hurt myself worse than I ever did in my entire life. Like the
Well,
yeah,
stunt that,
because that's the thing. With a bull, it's unpredictable because you can't control the bull to a certain extent.
but you just said he like made sure that all these stunts were good. Now you're going like, well, you can't predict that one.
Well, keep in
Any
mind, you're also
stunt can always go awry regardless of all the precautions. That's the thing of it. Nothing is 100% safe.
No.
But certainly there were wranglers. There were probably, rodeo clowns. There were whatever has, because we've seen him do Western stuff in the previous movies. I remember when they had the bull and they were doing the seesaw teeter-totter game. It was the four of them, and the bull was coming up and down, and if he bopped you off, then you had to run and go. It's gonna happen. I think
In the trailer, I see him do a prank where he sets himself on fire.
Yeah,
That's a
but
prank.
protective clothing.
He's
Don't
just wearing a
forget-
grandpa outfit.
I just want to point out that you're also looking at a target audience that made the Tide Pod Challenge and the Milk Crate Challenge a thing.
Yeah. I don't think the guys are dumb enough to do that stuff.
No,
I mean,
but
sure,
remember
they'll
who,
put honey
remember
and
who you're
salmon on a naked
influencing.
man and put a
Remember
bear
who
in
your
the room.
target market is
They're
in a
not
movie
gonna
like
use
this.
Tide Pod.
I mean, like I said, Milk Crate Challenge in its own right, but Tide Pod Challenge as well. Go ahead.
They hired one of the hardest hitting MMA fighters to punch someone in the balls.
But he has a cup on.
Can I make a suggestion of a YouTube channel from back in the day?
What?
There's a
for it.
channel called, especially for you two guys, especially you, Life and Level. Just look it up. I'll put it in
Life
the.
and
I'll
Level?
put, I will put it in the chat.
All right.
Brental Floss was the one that put me onto that, and I thought,
Life and Level.
it's been back. They haven't done any videos in years, but it takes Jackass to a brand new level beyond. But it also ties into gaming directly. I will probably have to go back and watch some of these things. One example, and I'll keep it simple, just as one. They had an episode competition where they played Punch Out on Wii while simultaneously being punched by actual boxers. The loser has to have something called a noob wheel, where they have to do something even worse, like lick a urinal cake, lick a strip, basically a stripper pole from a nudie booth, or
Wow.
a yellow swirly, these sort of things. This is, like I said, this is what Life and Level was all about. And feel free to take a look at some of this stuff. Yeah. Kinda wish they were
I'll
still doing
admit, I am intrigued.
oh my God, dude, the stuff that they had on there, it's just, they were out of Canada. There's a couple of guys, and
Of course,
Yeah.
Canadians.
somewhere in the Toronto, I think, and definitely in the Ontario area. Listen, those people out of Toronto and Canada, they're weird.
You know those people.
Yeah, they're all weird up there. Yeah.
Yeah,
For those
it's
that
like,
are
dude,
tuning in, the
it's
show
like,
is
And
Yeah,
we
all
lost
the
all
more
our
north you
Canadian
go,
viewers.
the crazier the people are.
as basically the credits start rolling on this episode immediately. We're insulting the people that produce
We're
the show
sorry,
in Canada.
Canada.
Right in
But
Warren.
anyway, so comment shows going off the air
Blame Canada. Blame Canada.
for all their
Oh,
hockey
that hockey
hullabaloo.
hullabaloo.
So
And the
anyway,
words
yeah,
I
so
can't say too.
Jackass. So Jackass 3 from the guy who was the sidekick in Men in Black 2 and also did the Dukes of Hazzard movie alongside what's her face and what's his face, Sean William Scott and
Jessica Simpson.
Jessica. I was gonna say Mrs. Former Tony Roma, whatever her name was.
Don't forget other movies he's done. He's done stuff like The Ringer.
Yes,
I'm surprised he hasn't been in a Fast and Furious yet.
you know what? He probably should. But yeah, remember my producer, my charismatic, personable, outgoing producer of this fine television program.
Who's from Canada? Blame
Who's from
Canada. Blame.
Yeah.
Well-
train just went off the rails there. Okay, bring
Yeah,
it back.
I totally lost my
Did
train of
you have
thought
any
there.
more to add? Because I know
I did
you-
for a second, and then it went away. With Johnny Knoxville, I was reading up a little bit about him the other day, and I guess he was a struggling actor trying to find his big break, and that's when he found Jackass. Or no, before Jackass, actually, he was just doing random video stunts for something, and MTV caught wind of it, and that's how that all got started. But I don't think he was a professional stunt man, so it's like, so he does all these things, but he's not trained to do them.
I would say
Well,
at
it's
this point
non-union
he's
stunt
probably more trained than some other people, though. I mean,
He's
the
more
man's gone
exper-
through it all.
He's more experienced. He didn't go to school. He just learned on the job.
That's how I did, dude. Listen, non-union stunt work can give you a lot of experience and frankly some decent coin.
Are you part of SAG? No, I got a job for you.
Dude, listen, SAG stunt work is brutally difficult to get into. It's something where it's such a tight-knit community that you basically have really no chance to be able to get in. But on the non-union side, you can get a lot of work, decent paying stuff, and still very safe. I took a taser in a commercial once, and we had the stunt coordinator there. He made sure everything was 100% safe, and I never felt a thing the entire time. One time actually the woman came a little too close. What they did is they had the real taser and then just took the clip out and then just stabbed me with a fake one. One time she got too close, like maybe within 2 feet, and he yelled cut. He was just like, he's not having any of that. And that's the kind of stuff, like I said, stunt coordinators are getting paid regardless. And it was completely 100% safe. It was a fun commercial too. It only took like 3 hours, and it aired pretty well. I think like 170,000 views, which was pretty cool. But yeah, like I said, if you're trying to get into stunt work, you start on the non-union side, especially because of the fact that non-union commercials can pay upwards of $6,000. I've seen higher, but I've auditioned for $6,000 in the last 6 months.
I'm debating if I should tell the story, but since I already started talking, I guess I'm going to have to say something now.
Yep.
So I've only run one SAG production, and it only had one SAG actor, and it was an action film. The two people who were in the action film fighting were not not the SAG actor.
No,
the
it's
SAG actor
understandable.
was the SAG actor was not allowed to get hurt at whatsoever or do anything dangerous whatsoever.
And yet,
Oh, that's
I'm going to
terrible.
basically regale a story of a TV show. I won't mention the name of it, but it is a comic book series that was filming here as a television series that was not, in fact, Marvel. Let me clarify that. It was not Netflix. It was not Marvel, but it was a comic book series. If you knew it, you knew what it was. They had me drive up and down Broadway at 111th Street down to 80th Avenue, running red lights, dodging actual traffic, including an ambulance once, to stay behind the main car. And in the end of it, they actually opted, and because there was no footage that couldn't be disproven, that it was not in fact a stunt. It was just simply regular driving as I was running red lights and dodging actual traffic, including taxis and, like I said, the ambulance. This went on for about 3 hours, and they paid me mileage, which ended up being an additional $5. I will not mention the fact that this TV show shares a name to a certain insect. And then it was tied into something that was also a TV show back in the 90s with a yell of spoon, if that means anything at all, or his sidekick being a
Really
Muppet
burying the
character.
lead there, Scott.
Dude, the show went up here. It was a tick. I was so
Yeah, I was
pissed.
about to say, like they're not even in production anymore. What are you worried about offending?
You know what? I was trying to be polite to the production, but I'm like, you know what? No.
Wait,
No, it was-
which tick was this?
a
Was
pilot of the tick episode. What's that?
was this the one that Amazon did?
Mhm.
I gotta say, I am upset that show is off the air because that was a good TV show.
It was
Even
better
if
than
you
it was
almost got
Yeah.
your sacrifice was not in vain.
That was a nightmare behind the scenes. It was so bad.
Really?
Sarah Finowitz hated that costume, and I don't blame him for it. But it was a lot of internal problems because the guy that was standing in there was also standing in on Orange Is the New Black, and that's where I got to know him from. And so he was telling me some of the stuff behind the scenes there, and it was a brutal shoot that had a lot of issues going on. And yeah, like you said, it's off the air, but I was so pissed. But there was no footage to say that I was not actually doing this, or that to prove that I was actually doing this. So I got paid for mileage at like 30 cents a mile times like 15 miles or whatever it was. And yeah, so it was the pilot episode. I never went back. So
Speaking of that, though, didn't you have the opportunity to be able to like lend your car out for a picture shoot?
did I ever
Scott?
lend my car out? I'm usually too paranoid to give my keys to somebody else. I got something in the works right now with a guy who wants me to drive his antique cars on sets and
What kind
whatnot.
of antique are we talking?
Basically a 54 Chevy, and some stuff from the 80s and the 90s. Yeah. And now I can't drive a manual. I can only drive automatic. But there are productions out there. And what would end up happening is we'd book me as a background person, so to speak. And then I would take the health insurance day, give him a couple $100 just to drive the car. And he just basically works management. And then we'll figure out the rates and everything. But he's a dude in Northeast New Jersey, somewhere around like Cliffside Park. That is probably going to happen. I got to go see that. But I'd love to drive a 54 Chev.
Yeah, but then God forbid if something does happen.
I know. And
Insurance
that
may be covered on it and everything, but that's always the what if whenever it comes to like, personal or using equipment or whatever. If
like-
something happens and it just costs the production everything, you feel like the biggest, like just fool. And
ass.
I'm saying fool to color it up, but you feel the worst if it's something somehow it doesn't go wrong, because then there's really ever isn't that much of an opportunity to do a second take.
Then of course you
That-
call the
that's
guy whose
true.
car whose car it is, and it's like, so do you remember your bumper?
Well, I was gonna say, like, I've only rented a car once for a film, but I had to get insurance for it.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
what the point Ryan's making, like, yeah, if I screwed up that car the day of my shoot, I would have lost an entire day of shooting.
Mm-hmm.
But if you screw up the car, it's like, I'm sorry, but we are going to give you money for it.
I saw something once. There was a movie in Connecticut. It was actually, it was the director. Director was Rob Reiner, and I loved it. It was just an accident what ended up happening, but it was in Southport, I think Northport, Connecticut, a really ritzy area. And this lady had this $50,000 Jaguar, and a crew cart with all metal tools and everything like that slid down the hill, and not only bumped into the Jag, but all the stuff came off the top. and just slid on the hood of the car and scraped the snot out of the hood of the car.
Wow.
And this is obviously a Jag. You can't buff that out. You got to replace the entire thing. We saw it, basically there was an accident form that was filled out and everything was resolved that way. But she basically, she was crying because she's like, I never told my husband I was taking the car today.
Oh,
Well, that's on you.
no. Yeah.
I don't know how that ever went, but yeah. So it's but anyway, yeah. Anyway, like I said,
End at
this is
your own
Tales from the
risk.
Film Set. Yeah. We're about halfway through the show at this point. By the way, Tales from the Film Set is available Instagram, Twitch, and Facebook at Tales from the Film Set, and on Twitter at Film Set Tales. Point that out as well. We got about halfway. Rob, you did have something regarding picture cars, and I think Tower Heist too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was we were working with our guy here, the manager, I guess you could call him. I don't know.
Oh
what his name
God,
is.
that guy. Yes,
We
guy whose first name I'm not totally sure of.
right,
Go ahead.
because he keeps changing it like every week. But I had gotten a background role through working with them, and I think it was Grant Wilfley. I don't remember if it was Grant Wilfley or whoever it was, but anyway, they were looking for picture cars. I drove in. I was completely available for like 3 days. They had me like move my car like several times. Didn't end up actually using it. It was the Macy's Day Parade scene.
Remember that day? I remember that was that day.
Yeah, and so basically they were like looking for cars to kind of like line the street, I guess. I don't know, but you had the parade going.
Like you can't find enough of those in New York City as it is.
Exactly.
But they paid
But I never did actually get to like use the car because supposedly they were looking for people to be able to drive like a block and then turn. That's what they were expecting anyway, but they didn't end up doing it. I mean, they had me. I was there for 3 days. Just they told me where to go and park, and it would have been an amazing opportunity to be on screen with your own car, kind of thing. But I mean, it was just one of those things that I guess they didn't really need my car. I guess I had a black car at the time, and I think that they had like 4 or 5 actually dark cars that they were using eventually in the film. But then again, like I said, that I don't think that they really even used them because it was that whole, what was it, the West Side Highway, or not West Side Highway, was the Central Park West.
Is that where? Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I remember
Right.
the day. But
Right in front of Trump Tower there were they were all Snoopy. I remember the scene. It was like, we go on Snoopy. It was in that time frame, where they were wanting us to use our car and everything, but we didn't. I didn't get to use mine.
But you still got paid for it though. I think it was
I
$35.
did. I ended up getting like a $25 bump each day, so
Yeah.
it wasn't
Actually,
too bad. I mean, of course, I was non-union at the time, so But
This actually brings up a question I have for both Rob and Scott. Now, for any actor that wants to go ahead and try to do like the background stuff with the car, I've seen those kinds of posts before, and unfortunately, I am the kind of person that like leases cars because I need something new and reliable for work. But if I was to get rid of it, would it make sense to invest in an older car? Because 9 times out of 10, when I see those posts, they're looking for like 10 or years older or more for certain automobiles. They don't want anything that's too new because then I guess it doesn't play into whatever timeline they're doing or whatever. But they're always looking for older cars that probably you couldn't get brand new anyways.
well,
Yeah.
as far as the work that I've done, where I ended up doing like 2 or 3 films where, they were using my car, but it didn't necessarily have like that description saying that it had to be like a 95 or older kind of thing. It was just bring in your vehicle. I have seen those descriptions where they're looking for vehicles that are like 2000 and newer. And then I have seen ones where they're like looking for Volkswagen Bugs, like 68 Volkswagen Bugs, that kind of thing. So it just depends. I mean, I would say if you were looking to buy a vehicle, I would buy something that was fairly old. I would say within the last 15, 20 years, something like that. Personally,
Yeah.
Okay, so still 21st century, nothing in the 90s.
right?
Yeah. If here's the thing, if it's an antique, it's considered legally an antique car, then they're
Right.
supposed to pay you $250 on top of
Wow.
whatever the background rate ends up being that day for an antique.
But what counts as an antique?
Anything with QQ or eligible for QQ plates. So at this point, basically, you're probably looking at 97. I think would be 25 years,
Oh wow.
which really kind of embarrassing. It really makes me feel sad to know that 1997 is considered an antique car now. But that notwithstanding, for a second,
Well, especially since I was
It's like that old Mazda
27 years
protege of my
old.
sister's. Dang it! If I only hadn't
dude, man,
gotten
I was
it.
working at a bank at that.
Well,
point.
you're
I was working
taking
like
my my '86 Ford Escort. You gotta give me.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
But here's the thing: 80s and 90s stuff. Basically, that a lot of that stuff is popular right now, like early 90s, because City on a Hill is 90 something. I don't know what year. So they use those kind of cars big time. Now, a regular car, and this has been a source of contention for a lot of car drivers for a while, is the rate for bringing in a car is $37.50 for a regular car. But for people that have to pay gas, mileage, tolls, it doesn't really work out to be a whole heck of a lot. And there's been some argument because when I first started, the union rate was $35, and it's gone up $2.50 in over a decade. So there's been a source of contention in that arena there. But
Meanwhile, you're someone that's going from Jersey over to New York, and the tolls just going across from the states. It
Right.
probably takes care of half that.
yeah, and that's where a lot of, like I said, for me personally, if I'm driving in anyway, I kind of get it back. A lot of times, more often than not, they don't even bother using the car. Yesterday they didn't, because we were supposed to do something on a small street in Brooklyn, but all the cars were snowed in, because if you're in New York City, you're not moving your car, especially when the snow hits. So I get there yesterday morning at 5:30 in the morning, and there is no space for anything. Long story short, they had us put our car in a parking garage. They paid the toll. They paid the garage for 4 hours, and then after less than 4 hours, it was like, all right, we're just going to wrap you out and let you go. We can't use you today. So I was in there officially on the clock at 6:30. I was out at 10:18 in the morning, and I was back to the house by, I don't know, 11:15 yesterday morning. Got paid a full day's rate though. So
I remember you were kind of freaking out a little bit about that because it was kind of just like left in a parking garage.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what's
really
going to happen.
skeevy
to that car.
garage too. Well, I made a stupid mistake, a really dumb mistake, because I left my hat and gloves on the passenger seat. In a parking garage in Brooklyn. I still have them. I still got them. But in a parking garage in Brooklyn on a cold snow day right after a snowstorm, I left my
Yeah, you're
hat
not
and my
putting your
gloves
hands in there comfortably.
Dude, somehow he was still there, and I'll take the win as I can get it. But yeah, but it was kind of funny because I got there and I'm like, what are we gonna do? So talked to locations, found an illegal spot in front of someone else who also parked illegally overnight, and eventually they're like, go to this location over here. I'm like, all right. And yeah, so I had to test for COVID. I got breakfast. They put me in a holding area, which was in fact colder than being outside. And then a little after 10 o'clock, they're like, yeah, can't use the cars, go home.
Wow.
So
paid
tough
full day.
day at work there now. So,
Oh, my
but
God.
yeah, a lot of times when you have a car, they never really use it. It's there just in case. Now, having said that, I will also say that crew does not give two craps about your car. So if they scratch the shit out of it, crap the poop out of it, if they do anything specific to it, and I've had that personally dealt with in this case, if more often than not, they're not going to say a word about it. So
That I find funny because your body, something could
not
happen
when
to
you
your
come
body
back out to the
like
car.
that. Yeah, but your car, which is much more expensive than some people,
Mhm.
forget it.
Listen, a lot of people don't care about your car. I park in New York every day, and some days I'm waiting for one of them to smack it up and just go and walk
Mm.
away, which I've heard happens at a lot of parking decks.
Well, see, actually, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's like I have put my car in films now that I'm thinking about it, but I've never done it professionally, and I don't. Stories like what you say and just knowing people in the business, I would not trust anyone else with my car unless it was a small crew and I knew them.
Power, I was okay. Power, my old car, my navy blue one, the Power on Stars loved that car to the point they're just like, give us the keys, we'll call you. And I'd hand them the keys, and like 12 hours later, they're like, all right, come back to your car, go home. And I just, you do once around the car, make sure it's fine. I would just drive back. It was great because they loved they would use the car for a lot of garages because it was just grimy and kind of this really not really upscale kind of car there. And yeah, it was easy. It was great. I'd sit in holding, watch some stuff on Netflix, go get something to eat. It's like, so.
Actually,
But still, it's like you're giving away your car and like, there you go, and then you hope to God you get it back in one piece.
And that's, like I said, it was fine because, like I said, I worked with Power for years with that car, and we knew each other so well. So there was one time specifically that they put it up on a lift in a garage, and then called me 12 hours later. So I made $400 to not do anything that day.
JT, do you remember Bradley?
Crianza?
Bradley?
Bradley
Crianza.
Cruzano.
No.
Like skinny dude, blonde, long hair, looked very 80s-ish.
No.
Well, I bring him up because he was a guy that had like one of those like 1980s hot rod cars, and he tried to put it in every single film he could. Whether it was the film he was making or if it was a film that someone else was doing. I think they actually, when we did the Emmets for Meat thing down in Philadelphia, I think he was brought it in for that too. And I would be scared to death about having a car that good go through so many different situations because you don't know other people. You don't know possibly the people that are running the film, and you don't know what they're going to do with it. They say they're going to treat it with kid gloves, and they say they're going to treat it well because they need it for the film, but they don't know your automobile like you do. And that could be completely dangerous. I could never trust anybody else, I think, if it was that good of a car. If I had a junker, if I had my old 1985 Ford Tempo, that was my first car when I was in high school, do with that whatever you want. All right? That thing should have lasted 6 months. I had it for 2 years. I don't know how it lived. Do what you want with that. But I could never have a good car and give it away to somebody.
I think the only time I had a new car back in 2008, and I put it on one film, and I was a producer on that film. And if I wasn't, they would have not had that car.
Is that the one in Rockland County?
No, that's not Rockland. What film was Rockland? Are you talking about
Sunshine?
No.
Okay.
No, it's actually Devani. Well, no, Devani wasn't part of the production, but he knows the filmmaker who helped me with that. And I say Devani because he's watching right now.
You can comment over there.
Give him shout out since he's been commenting most of the night on our stuff.
Thank you, dude. There you go. Wow.
Yes. You get the shout out even when you're not on the show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Facts.
Now they're rolling in at this point. So, but yeah. Go ahead.
Do I have anything else to say? No, I don't. Scott, you go.
All right. On that very, very blunt turnover on that. Yeah. Hey, Rob, how about you? No, I'm gonna do like a
what were we talking about?
cars. Yeah. All right. You know what? Here, I'm gonna talk amongst yourselves. I'll give you a topic. By the way, kids, Mike Myers was an SNL, and that was a bit he used to do that no kid nowadays even I would recognize because it's not like Pete Davidson and.
Okay, so we talked about stunts. We talked about cars on films. To kind of continue a thing, we talked a tiny bit about fight scenes. Mm-hmm. So I think a few of us, all of us, have somehow been involved with fight scenes. Maybe we should talk about our experiences with that.
Sure.
I mean, I was slapped by an adult film star, and I had to drop to the ground from it. So there's that.
And why did an adult film star slap you? Were you uncouth? Did you say something you shouldn't have said?
No, if anything, I actually said everything I was supposed to say in order to elicit the reaction. This was a film that I was making. I'm sure JT is familiar with it, Trip.
I gave you an award.
One of them I did at the Exotica Expo that we have here in Edison, New Jersey every fall. And I wanted a bunch of different starlets to guest appear in the film. And the whole idea was that I was kind of going through a dream sequence. So I was like going from location to location, but it was all in my head. And I needed something in order for me to transition from one scene to the other, which normally meant that I was like falling on my face, and that led to the next like boom. And all of a sudden I was somewhere else. And I was thinking, why would I fall at an adult film and love exhibition?
Oh, why?
Someone would slap me. So I went ahead. I talked to a couple of different people. I was thankful to get one of my favorites, Tori Lane. God bless her.
Mhm.
I haven't seen her in a while, but she's definitely good people. And we were able to run through a couple of different times where I would pretty much just be running through the place being chased. I would land in her, so head to breast,
Oh my.
and the pickup would be like, I pick myself up. She's like, "Why you little?" And then just slap me so hard that I spin around and I fall on the ground. We had to do that like at least 5 times, and we had to do it quickly because we couldn't necessarily have like an audience build up because then it wouldn't look natural. So I'm like, I'm getting hit, I'm falling to the ground, I'm picking myself up, I'm throwing myself back in her, she's pushing me off, hit, down. But we do that constantly back and forth for a few.
You're a
It
glutton.
looks great on
On-
film, especially with the
onto
fan
her.
lights and everything.
Yeah, he's
It's on to her. You're saying something you really shouldn't say when you're talking about a porn actress.
Fall onto like head to things.
You're
You know,
saying into.
I think you said into, and that has a different connotation
Into,
in any
onto,
situation.
it's a crevice. All right, you work with the crevice.
I didn't hear anything, so I heard
This is the most you can get off of me when I'm not swearing. All right, I'm trying
night,
to
everybody.
be creative. This is gonna be a clip. I know this is gonna be a clip.
Yep, I'm already thinking time up here.
But yes, having to work with people who at least are comfortable with that sort of situation and are all gun ho about being a part of it, I couldn't have pulled it off any better if I had used anybody else. Anyone else I think would have probably been, even actresses probably would have been a little bit more skittish. So to go ahead and get like a pro, perfect.
So
Nice.
okay, and my question in this case here, did she actually physically make contact when she slapped you?
Yes.
Mhm.
No, there was
how-
no
and-
way I had ever had like formal training before from anybody else, and I doubt that she had either. So I had to make it as realistic as possible in order for it to actually work. Because if she just went like, and I reacted, it would
But I mean,
look fake because we were
it
that
wasn't like a
close up
proper
on the scene. So I really had to have her like that. And I figured if I can do it myself, she can do it too. And I pretty much just showed her like exactly how hard I would like just a little tap. Obviously, I would react extra for it. I would play it up like like wrestlers do. When they fake punch, but then they like really sell it.
Mhm.
It's like they give that fallback to it. So at least I could sell it well enough. But yeah, it's
Was
not like
your-
it ever
was your
hurt me. It wasn't
face
like
all red
someone
and
hitting me in
everything,
the arm.
Did you swell up there too, like you did on your arm and that other thing?
the 5 fingers.
Now, see, you
were
talk about
fucking-
me using words, and you're using the word swell. All right, that's terrible.
I meant your
But
face.
no,
This
I was
is a
perfectly
family
fine.
show. Come on, people.
I meant your face. No, but I mean,
But yeah, JT, I know you've done like more formal fight training and everything.
I won't say it's fight training. It was years ago. I met a friend named Vitaly Tomaszewski.
Mhm.
Like wonderful, nice guy, an amazing like independent filmmaker. It was just me and him hanging out, and he would show me all these fight films he did. And one day I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. I wish I could do that." Oh, I can do that with you. And he just pulled out his camera, and we made a fight film.
Nice.
It
Wow.
it's just you just have to know like certain things. Like one, it's I don't want to say like again, I'm not a professional. Like Devani here, I think has who's watching us, I think has done a lot more professional fight scenes than I have.
Yes, I've actually seen a couple of his films where he's like, doing the punch and kicking.
I have done a lot of fight scenes.
Yeah.
But with a lot of the stuff that I've always done with Vitaly, it's just kind of more common sense and kind of like step-by-step choreography. Like we'd set up a camera, we'd figure out a 3-move combination. Like I'm going to punch you here, you're going to block, then I'm going to hit here, you're going to block, you're going to twist my arm, and I'm going to move around here. So, and the shot. Switch the camera around, figure out where we're going from that, create another combination. And you do that for like maybe 2 minutes worth of shoots or of shots, and you have a full fight scene at that point.
And what's funny about that? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, The only thing I was going to add on to that was a few years, well, actually 15 years ago now. Man, I'm feeling old. I shot a short film called $5 Fight, where basically he and I and two other friends, we took all the skills that we had learned, went to my old college, Kane University, and we came up on the spot in an 8-hour film shooting day, an entire 5-minute fight film from start to finish. And it's again just using that same process of just start here, we move here, and this is what we're going to do.
With no pre-planning or anything on like the moves or pacing it out.
In the chat, Devani, he remembers that film.
And yet in a union project, something like that, and this is something Jackie Chan talked about, in like a SAG project, that kind of fight scene would literally take you 14, 15 hours, even more depending. But in an indie project, it's like, okay, do this. And then they just set up with the camera and everything like that. I had something similar. We did a 3 or 4 camera setup, just the same routine, 1 minute and 8 seconds straight through every single time. And within 3 hours, we had this 1 minute fight scene. But that's, I mean, like I said, in a union project, that thing can take you a day, maybe even 2. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, what I've kind of learned, depending on A, crew, and B, the type of production you have, things can either go faster or slower. So you have a film that, like this film I'm talking about, had 4 people in it. It was me doing camera. I had another friend as my assistant, and then the 2 actors who were both doing the choreography and the action for this thing. Between us, we had a process. We knew what we were doing, and like boom, 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 we get it out. Now let's do a film where you got a director, an AD, a director of photography, a lighting grip, multiple PAs, someone setting up the scene. All of a sudden, that same film takes forever because everyone wants to be professional and they got to do their separate jobs to the max. So it just becomes more complicated and it takes a lot longer to do.
Almost like too many cooks spoil the pot.
Yes.
Yeah. That was something that pissed off Jackie Chan in a lot of ways, because when he did the first Rush Hour movie, there was a scene in there where we had to like hop up, the side a couple of a wall, and then basically he lands in front of a camera, security camera. He just pushes the camera and then just flips over the top. They had the setup. He said the whole process for this one stunt took like 8 hours, and yet for every movie that he ever did, like all the police story movies or all the stuff that he did in China, that whole thing would have taken like 25 minutes. But they had to set everything up, like you said.
Well, and one more. Well, speaking about Jackie Chan, that was actually Vitaly, who I always trusted to put a lot of this together. His inspiration was Jackie Chan. Mm-hmm. And even if, like, I'm referring to $5 Fight, if anyone wants to see it, it's on YouTube. You'll notice that some of the scenes that were in there were old fight scenes that Jackie Chan used to do. Okay. Just because Vitaly used to like study like how he would put films together and use that in his method to make his films as well. Mm-hmm. So I could tell that Jackie Chan like would probably be very fast coming up with this stuff, and then you put him in a Hollywood environment and go,
yeah. I mean, Hollywood paid better, but by God.
Yeah, I'll take a Jackie Chan stunt over a Tom Cruise hanging from a plane any day.
Well, yeah, but give Tom Cruise credit. He is insane enough. He's arguably one of the best stunt people on the Western Hemisphere. I'll give him that. Apparently a really nice guy, although, a little short.
Yeah, but that's because when he dies, he's going to go off to Xenu with all the other aliens. All right, I'm not trusting him for anything.
We're not getting into Scientology on this one. We only got a minute and a half left.
He's turned me off for 25 years, but recently I finally caught a clip after like 12 years of Ghost Mission or whatever that Mission Impossible was.
Yeah, Ghost Protocol.
It actually looks like a really good film, and now I want to actually watch it.
I have a plan to watch all the Mission Impossible movies in order, kind of like I did with Fast and the Furious and some of the other ones and some of the Marvel stuff. But we can discuss that next time. We got to wrap it up right now. We have about 1 minute left. That'll be 1 minute left. So yes, uno momento left. So Rob, Ryan, JT, thank you guys as always. Thank you, Devani. Thank you also, Alexander, who put in a spam thing on our YouTube. Appreciate that. So, by the way, Tales from the Film Set is available on Twitch, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Tales from the Film Set, and Film Set Tales on Twitter. Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern, we will be doing our watch party for, I believe, episode 6 of the HBO series Peacemaker.
With more fight choreography.
Yes, also phenomenal fight choreography and also some really good dance music too. So anyway, on behalf of myself, Rob, JT, and Ryan, this is Tales from the Film Set. Have a great day. Stay awesome.
Stay